In this lesson, we're going to continue our discussion about electricity and electrical for oil heating. We have a few more basic terms we do have to review before we get into the meat of the course material. Again, electrical is extremely important. You really need to understand this material in order to move forward. So, let's start with a circuit. Okay, an electrical circuit is a full path for electricity to flow. A circuit absolutely must consist of four parts. You have to have a source. We have to have some place where the voltage comes from. We have to have a switch, something to turn it on and off or control the flow of electricity. We have to have a path, and we have to have a load. So the source for a circuit can be a battery, a transformer, we'll talk more about that later, a wall electrical outlet, a power line, a breaker panel, or a power plant. A lot of times the sources are dependent on your frame of reference. So in other words, an auto mechanic will be looking at a battery as the source. An HVAC technician or an electrician could be looking at a transformer, like the one on the pole outside the building, or perhaps the one that's in the equipment, and we're going to talk about more on that later. We could be looking at the wall electrical outlet as a source. We could be looking at the power line as a source. We could be looking at the breaker panel as a source, or the lineman could be looking at the power plant as a source. So it's all based on your frame of reference. A path for an electrical circuit could be a wire, a circuit board, a piece of grounding strap. All that's required is the path must have a low resistance. It allows electrons to move freely and without heat. A path with high resistance will heat up. A switch is basically a valve or gate that stops the free flow of electrons. It does this by opening the path. Now we add two more terms. Open. It's a gap or an opening in the path of an electrical circuit that stops the flow of electrons. Closed is a path that is complete and allows the electrons to flow, allows the flow of electrons. A load is the portion of an electrical circuit that actually does the work. A load could be a light bulb. The work done is creating heat and light. A motor, the work is turning the shaft, but we also create heat. A heat strip, the work is putting off is to produce heat. A coil, the work is to create a magnetic field. So pictures of circuits are called schematic diagrams. These diagrams are composed of symbols that represent each part of the circuit. These symbols are called schematic symbols. So this is an example of a basic circuit. For those of you who are in a shop-based program, this is what you're going to build on day one of your shop. L1 and N is my source. The wire then is my path that connects to SW1, which is switch. That switch is currently open because there's a gap. Electrons can, in a schematic, cannot jump that gap. We're going to talk more about that in electrical safety eventually. Okay, but it's open. You can see that where my mouse pointer is, there's no path for electricity to flow. Then we have B1, which could be a motor, it could be a light bulb, it could be a heater. Okay, it's anything in this diagram that's a load. Okay, now in this case, we're going to count that B1 is a light bulb. And then the other side of the circuit, the path must connect back to the source. Okay, so L1 and neutral in this case, L1 and N is our source. This could be any labeling of source, but you just have to know what it is. So we have a path with an open switch, a load, and then back to neutral. Basic electrical circuit. So a schematic diagram of a switch is just a single pole, single throw switch, or a single pole, double throw switch. The pole is where the switch moves. The throw is how many wires it can hit or how many different places it has. I could add another line down where my mouse is, right above the text, and I could make this a triple throw switch. But single pole. Okay, poles and throw. The pole is where my arrow is, labeled pole. Throw is my two choices. Which wires are going to connect to? Source on a schematic could be labeled L1, L2, N, or anything else. It's usually at one side of the schematic, top, side, bottom, and everything else works from there. Loads are shown by either an actual schematic symbol for the load or by a circle with a letter and a key off to the side. Loads are the portion of the circuit that does the work. So this is a more complex schematic diagram. We have symbols for a wide variety of things. Now it's very important that you realize that the letters and the designations for the symbols sometimes match a control component. So this is a schematic symbol for a normally open contactor. This is a normally closed contactor. Well, you'll notice that it's labeled C2, both of those. Well, there's a control component someplace in here. Right there, there's a coil also labeled C2. So all the labels that are the same affect each other. Just like C1 here is affected or controlled by C1 there. So when you look at a schematic, you sometimes have to look at where the other portions of the component are. And this is schematic we will come back to. So just a few words for those who are in a shop-based program or who are going to try to do these projects on your own. Make sure everything you're working with is unplugged and turned off before you start wiring anything. Use black wire for line voltage source. Use white wire for line voltage neutral. Use red wire for control voltage source. Use orange wire for control voltage common, which is also would be neutral, but in control voltage we have a source and we have a common. If you are in the shop with an instructor, your instructor must check all circuits before you power it up. That means before you plug it in and turn it on, the instructor must check it. Make sure the instructor initials your lab sheets. For our first shop project, we're going to build a basic circuit. Okay? If you have the electrical handout, you'll follow the step-by-step procedures. Make sure you ask if you need help or have any questions. Everyone in the class is expected to wire and complete this assignment. So for shop circuit number 1, real easy. It's the circuit we just talked about. We have a service switch. That's the one that is our incoming source, sort of like a breaker. We have switch 1 and we have B1 and we have neutral. B1 is a light bulb. And once this is built, then we will start working with meters and everything else. For those working on this on your own, all these parts are available at Home Depot. You'll use or Lowe's or any home improvement store. You can use a plug that you can get, 2 switches, make sure they go in a box and are mounted on a board, a light bulb base with a light bulb, and just the neutral as part of the plug.